Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Dobro jutro. Buenos dias. And guten Tag. Wait. Good morning, Sparkle. I wonder if she can hear me. Sparkle, remember me? Hello. Nice cows. Jayarad Madhava Jaya Kunja Hari Jayarad Madhava Jaya Kunja Hari Gopidannava Jaya Girivarada Jaya Girivarada Gopidannava Jaya Girivarada Jaya Girivarada Yashodanandana Jaya Rajajanarandana Yashodanandana Jaya Rajajanarandana Namugatira Anachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Namugatira Anachari Jaya Kunja Jaya Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Gopidannava Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Gopidannava Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Shri Nanda Jaya Brajajanarandana Jaya Yasodhanandana Jaya Raja Yamuna Tiraya Manachari Jaya Kunja Jaya Kunja Yamuna Tiraya Chari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bo Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. How lucky are we? The fifth canto, chapter 1, which is entitled, what is it entitled? It is entitled The Activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. Aptly named. He really liked his renunciation and also austerity, but he sacrificed that for the greater good. So chapter 1, the activities of Maharaja Priyavrata, who was the older brother of Uttanapada, right? He's the older brother of Maharaj Uttanapada. And we're doing text number 7. Ataha Bhagavan Adideva etasya guna visargasya Parimbrimhana Dudhyana Vasita Sakala Jagad Abhipraya Atmayonir Akila Nigama Nijagana Pariveshtitaha Svabhavanad Avatatara. Word for word translation says, Ata, thus, Ha, indeed, Bhagavan, the most powerful, Adi Devaha, the first demigod, Etasya, of this universe, Guna Visargasya, the creation of the three modes of material nature, Paribrimhana, the welfare. This is important. Anudhyana, always thinking of. Vyavasita, known. Sakala, whole. Jagat, of the universe. Abhiprayaha, by whom the ultimate purpose. Atma, the supreme self. Yonihi, whose source of birth. Akila, all. Nigama, by the Vedas. Nijagana, by personal associates. Pariveshtitaha, being surrounded. Svabhavanat, from his own abode. Avatatara, descended. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Shukadev Goswami continued, the first created being and most powerful demigod in this universe is Lord Brahma, who is always responsible for developing universal affairs. Born directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he dedicates his activities to the welfare of the entire universe, for he knows the purpose of the universal creation. This supremely powerful Lord Brahma, accompanied by his associates and the personified Vedas, left his own abode in the highest planetary system and descended to the place of Prince Priyavrata's meditation. Purport. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Self, Atma, is the source of everything. As explained in the Vedanta Sutra, Janmadhyasya Taha. Janmadhyasya Yataha. Because Brahma was born directly from Lord Vishnu, he is called Atmayoni. He is also called Bhagavan. Although generally Bhagavan refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, or Lord Krishna, sometimes great personalities, such as demigods like Lord Brahma, Narada, or Lord Shiva, are also addressed as Bhagavan, because they carry out the purpose of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Brahma is called Bhagavan because he is the secondary creator of this universe. He is always thinking of how to improve the situation of the conditioned souls who have come to the material world to enjoy material activities. For this reason, he disseminates the Vedic knowledge throughout the universe for everyone's guidance. Vedic knowledge is divided into two parts, Pravritti Marga and Nivritti Marga. Nivritti Marga is the path of negating sense enjoyment, and Pravritti Marga is the path by which the living entities are given a chance to enjoy, and at the same time are directed in such a way that they can go back home, back to Godhead. Because ruling over this universe is a great responsibility, Brahma must force many Manus in different ages to take charge of universal affairs. Under each Manu, there are different kings who also execute the purpose of Lord Brahma. It is understood from previous explanations that the father of Dhruva Maharaj, King Uttanapada, ruled over the universe because his elder brother, Priyavrata, practiced austerity from the beginning of his life. Thus, up to the point of the Prachetas, the kings of the universe were all descendants of Uttanapada Maharaj. Since there were no suitable kings after the Prachetas, Swayambhuva Manu went to the Gandhamadana hill to bring back his eldest son, Priyavrata, who was meditating there. Swayambhuva Manu requested Priyavrata to rule over the universe. When he refused, Lord Brahma descended from the supreme planetary system known as Satyaloka to request Priyavrata to accept the order. Lord Brahma did not come alone. He came with other sages like Marichi, Atreya, and Vishishta to convince Priyavrata that it was necessary for him to follow the Vedic injunctions and accept the responsibility of ruling over the world. Lord Brahma also brought with him the personified Vedas, his constant associates. So, quite an authoritative council coming to change Priyavrata's mind about renunciation. It took a lot of effort. A significant word in this verse is svabhavanat. Svabhavanat, indicating that Lord Brahma descended from his own abode. Every demigod has his own abode. Indra, the king of the demigods, has his own abode, as do Chandra, the lord of the moon planet, and Surya, the predominating deity of the sun planet. There are many millions of demigods, and the stars and planets are their respective homes. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Yanti Deva Vrata Devan. Those who worship the demigods go to their different planetary systems. Lord Brahma's abode, the highest planetary system, is called Satyaloka, or sometimes Brahmaloka. Brahmaloka usually refers to the spiritual world. The abode of Lord Brahma is Satyaloka, but because Lord Brahma resides there, it is also sometimes called Brahmaloka. Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manavishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopeshka Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we're hearing from Shukadeva Goswami the story of Maharaj Priyavrata, and particularly how Lord Brahma had to personally come and ask him, please be the emperor of the whole world. He had to bring some heavy hitters with him, some muscle, some intellectual and spiritual muscle. Marichi, Atreya, Vishishta, the personified Vedas. All these people had to come. Even Priyavrata's guru, Narada Muni, really was unable to convince him, isn't it? Did we read that part already? Yeah. Because of the mercy of Narada Muni, he attained the highest perfection of transcendental knowledge. And so Priyavrata was under the impression that if I stop my life of renunciation, my nivritti marga, and take up the duty of managing this planet, it's going to affect my spiritual consciousness, my Krishna consciousness. He didn't want to sacrifice that for anything in this world. Of course, that's the standard of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is more important, more valuable, and far more pleasurable than anything in this material world. He's demonstrating that. So we shouldn't be surprised. He doesn't want to give up his state of Krishna conscious bhakti yoga. He's under the impression that taking up management of the planet would cause some depletion of his spiritual consciousness. It would affect him negatively. He understands, as Srila Prabhupada says in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, somewhere, he says it, that the path of Nivritti Marg is superior to Pravritti Marg. There are these two ways forward, the Marga. I wonder if I can find that reference really quickly. But there are these two ways forward. One is by karma yoga, you could say, enjoying the things that we have and the things that we're attached to, making use of them, but also offering them to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, trying to use them in service to others. I have some wealth, I have some home, I have some family, some social networks, I have some assets. Let me use them in a way that serves Krishna, but also I want to enjoy them. It's generally the path of pravritti marga. I have a vritti, I have a state of consciousness, which includes certain attachments. And I make use of that. I employ that as a means for enjoyment, but also as a means for progress spiritually. That's the path of pravritti marga. Prabhupada says here that the living entities are given a chance to enjoy and at the same time are directed in such a way that they can go back home, back to Godhead. Maybe it'll be a couple lifetimes, maybe a couple hundred lifetimes, but generally the path of Pravritti Marga is inferior. I found the reference. It is in the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 2, text number 6. Wherein Prabhupada says the path of enjoyment is inferior and the path of sacrifice for the supreme cause is superior. He's talking about pravritti and nivritti. So nivritti, as the name implies, means even though I've got some state of mind, even though I've got some attachment, some bodily concept of life, I'm going to renounce all of that. I'm not going to allow that to become any sort of impetus, and I'm certainly not going to allow that to be any distraction or impedance to my progressive Krishna consciousness. So that's generally called the path of renunciation, negating sense enjoyment. Priyavrata, as his name implies, is very attached to his vrata, to his vow. He chose the path of renunciation as a great brahmachari, even from a young age, while his younger brother, Uttanapada, was managing the planet and was involved in the politics and the drama. Of course, there's a whole story of Dhruva Maharaj, and there's the Prachetas, there's a lot of things going on. He's enjoying his renunciation, which is superior. Prabhupada says it is superior. Superior because it is less dangerous. Prabhupada says that somewhere. Superior because there's no unnecessary material desire, is less dangerous. We're trying to dovetail all of our material desires, there's always a chance of an accident, just like while traveling along even the best roads, the royal roads, there's always a chance of some sort of accident. You can have a really nice car and be on a really nice road in America, where people drive relatively well compared to other parts of the world. Still, there's always a chance of some accident. Doesn't matter how safe you try to be, the potential for catastrophe is always there. So similarly, by following the path of pravritti marga, sense enjoyment mixed with devotional service, there's always some risk that you get too much of a dose of sense enjoyment and become bewildered for a couple of lifetimes. Or that your attachment to certain types of enjoyment must cause the suffering of some other living entities, which is going to slow down your progress. Lack of compassion is generally antithetical to the spiritual state of mind. And it is often the case that the things that we enjoy in this world must come at the cost of someone else's suffering. Just name all of your favorite commodities. You should know pretty well that it must come at the cost of someone else's suffering. We have, that means someone else has less. If I'm enjoying something, it means somebody labored to produce it. And the state of the world now, they're probably not being paid enough to produce that thing. So there's a lot of risk with pravritti marga, the path of dovetailing our enjoyment. Although it sounds really nice, it sounds like I can get the best of both worlds. But really, you don't. You can't get the best of both worlds. Eventually, you must come to the world of full-on Krishna consciousness. Pravritti marg results in renunciation of this material world and complete attachment to Krishna. It's not like I don't have to do the renunciation part. It just means delaying it. Delaying it because I still have some attachments and I'm ripping the Band-Aid off very, very slowly instead of just yank. But the devotees are smarter than that. We know death is coming to take away everything, and that it's not worth it to put in so much effort to try to get a better existence in the next life and a higher planet and go up and up and up the ladder, trying to enjoy more and more. It's not worth the effort. What is worth the effort? What is really worth the effort? Narada Muni answered this. The teacher of Priyavrata, he answered and said, what is the real effort that's worth it? What is that verse he says? You all know what I'm talking about. If you just, like me, you cannot remember the Sanskrit. So who's going to find it first? Da, 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 da. He says in the first canto, text number 5, chapter 5, text number 18, I think. Tasyaiva heto prayateta kovido nalabhyate yad brahmatam uparyata Talabhyate dukavad anyata sukham kalena sarvatra vidaram hasa. Here he's kind of denouncing the whole pravritti marg thing. He says it's not worth the effort. It's not worth it. Intelligent persons who are really philosophically inclined, meaning they're thinking deeply about what they want to do, they endeavor only for that purposeful end, which is not obtainable anywhere in this universe, whether you wander all the way up to Brahmaloka, right? That's what we're hearing about in this verse. You go all the way up to Brahmaloka, all the way down to Pataloka, or anywhere else in between. There's nothing within that realm which is worth it. Instead, we are endeavoring for something which is not obtainable anywhere in this material universe. What is that thing? Pure devotional service. It's not a part of this material universe. It's not a part of this world. And he says, if you're really intelligent, then you should consider working so hard for happiness, but actually your happiness is just coming automatically, just like your distress comes automatically. When are we going to get this? When is it going to finally download into our brain? I'm thinking that I need to work so hard to get some happiness. But Narada Muni says, if you're very philosophical, kulvidaha, you should consider that the happiness just kind of comes automatically. It's the result of your karma, just like your distress comes automatically, and you don't endeavor for it. You don't wake up in the morning and think, let me stub my toe. And then there'll be no hot water. I'll have a cold shower. And then let me, I don't know, be out of gas, crash into something. And I hope that some people are really upset at me and they say something terrible. We don't endeavor for these things. You don't make plans for that. But they happen anyway. It'll just happen regardless. The miseries of life will be there. You don't have to arrange for them. You don't have to make plans. So Narada Muni says, similarly, the happiness that you want with your body, with your mind, it'll come automatically. So therefore, it's not worth endeavoring for. That's pravritti marga. It's not worth putting in the effort to try to enjoy this material world. It's not worth it. Eventually, even one who follows the path of pravritti marga, trying to dovetail all of their sense enjoyment, trying to justify their bodily concept of life, justify their attachments, eventually that person must still renounce everything anyway. It's not that pravritti marg just means you enjoy and you have a great time and you ride this escalator all the way up to the top of the universe, and then you just open a little door and you step out. Still, you have to give up attachment to everything in this material world. So, better to do it now. That's what Prabhupada says. The path of Nivritti Marg is superior. And that's what Priyavrata was doing. That's what Priyavrata was doing. Whereas, in comparison, Uttanapada, his younger brother, apparently, at least superficially, seemed to be enjoying his position as the emperor, as the king. That comes with all sorts of amenities, perks. And no doubt he was a pious king, naturally. But, if you're a king, you're probably enjoying. There's some term now. There's some term to describe how in a position of power require good people, but just because of the nature of the office, at least in this Kali Yuga, it doesn't attract good people. Like we want to have a good president or good congressman or whatever. But just because the nature of the office, it only attracts people who aren't actually very good. There's some term for that conundrum. I can't remember what it is. But generally you get some position of power and it comes with all sorts of enjoyment, all sorts of perks. And then things tend to go downhill from there. We've all read the news, so we know what we're talking about. So Priyavrata is seeing that I don't want to do this. I don't want that office. I don't want to be the king. I don't want the position of power. I've attained progress in transcendental knowledge. What did it say in the verse yesterday? That by the grace of Narada, he attained the highest perfection of transcendental knowledge. And he did not want to divert his attention to anything else. And he was right to do so. That's the important thing. He was right. He was right to want to stay on the path of nivritti, renunciation, detachment from the material world, and focus on Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then why did everybody have to come down here and tell him, we'll come down to Gandamadana Hill and tell him, please, you must be the king of the world. You have to take on this duty. Everyone had to try to convince him, and he was protesting for a bit. Why? And this is the part that's really important, and the significance of this story, the significance of this whole chapter, is that there's something even more important than your renunciation of the material world. There's something even more important, believe it or not, than your convenient spiritual lifestyle. And that is compassion for the people in general. We have to go out of our comfort zone. Priyavrata was in his comfort zone. We might think renunciation is not so comfortable, but if you've been in the ashram for some time, you get kind of used to it. You get used to your expectation of simplicity. Actually, it can be a type of bondage. We get into our comfort zone in Krishna consciousness. Well, I think a lot of us are guilty of this, so I'll be a little critical of myself and of others. Krishna mentions this in the Bhagavad Gita in his description of the mode of goodness in chapter 14, text number 6, I think. Which again, I can't remember the Sanskrit. It's one of those days. Hold on. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14, text number 6. Yeah. Tatra sattvam nirmalatvat prakashakam anamayam sukha sangena banati jnana sangena janagaha. This is actually a really common scenario for a lot of us devotees. Let's be honest here. But he says this mode of goodness, it's purer than the others. It's purifying, it's enlightening. Prakashakam, anamayam. But sukha sangena banati, banna, bondage. There's a sort of bondage that comes from the happiness and the knowledge of one situated in the mode of goodness. It's an attachment that here I am, I've established myself in the mode of goodness by the practice of yoga, by some austerity, by the cultivation of knowledge, by a certain lifestyle, cultivated the mode of goodness. Since most of us in Krishna consciousness, at least relative to humanity in general, we have a lot more sattva guna in our lives. Vegetarian, we don't indulge in intoxications and try to be truthful, honest, pious. This is all symptoms of the mode of goodness. But what is the result of that? We're not suffering as much as we used to. For a lot of us, that's the reason we came to Krishna consciousness. Now I'm not suffering so much. I'm enjoying a more peaceful lifestyle. I'm enjoying the comfort and a sense of superiority over others. Not like those karmis. But Krishna says this is bondage. Sukha sangena badnati, jnana sangena chanaga. He said to Arjuna, sinless Arjuna, this is a type of bondage. And I think it's hits home for a lot of us devotees. I'm comfortable now. I've improved upon myself. I don't suffer in the way of normal people. Like sometimes you contact your friends and family and non-devotees and you hear how they're suffering, things that for us, it's no problem. We bypass a lot of these issues that many people go through. And we can really forget how much people are suffering, especially if we stay cloistered in our own community. And it's very important to be in our community and get the benefit of Vaishnava Sangha, but it's easy to forget the sort of suffering that people go through. Thinking, I'm comfortable, I'm happy now, I have some knowledge. Krishna says, badnati, this is bondage. So Priyavrata might have been thinking the same thing. I've attained some progress in transcendental knowledge. I've attained some status of perfection. I don't want to give that up and take up this pravritti marga or do some sort of administrative work, become some politician. But why did he eventually do it? Why is it that Brahma and Narada, his gurus, came and told him, no, you should do this? Why? Because there's actually a higher purpose involved here that's superior to our own concern for our own spiritual life, is concern for others' spiritual life. It is actually a higher purpose. It's the difference between Bhajananandi and Goshtyanandi. Bhajananandi is one who takes pleasure in their own bhajan, their own cultivation of Krishna consciousness, their own worship of the Lord. Goshtyanandi is one who derives pleasure in sharing that with others, increasing the Krishna Katha and the Kirtana. In the first paragraph of this purport, it said that Brahma is Bhagavan. Because he carries out the purpose of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he knows what is the purpose of this universe. And he's always thinking of how to improve the situation of the conditioned souls who have come to the material world to enjoy material activities. That's why he's Bhagavan. That's why he's a very great personality. He's always thinking of how to improve the situation of the conditioned souls who have come to the material world. But this is superior to being worried about your own spiritual comfort. It's not superior to worrying about your own spiritual progress. We should always be concerned with our own spiritual progress. We should not sacrifice that for anything. But what's hard for us to understand is that sometimes we're in the bondage of the mode of goodness. Although we make progress by the mode of goodness, still it is a type of bondage. And we need to go out of our comfort zone to help others. That's Sankirtana. Yes, now I'm more happy. Yes, I have more knowledge. But if I think because of that, I don't want to disturb my happy and knowledgeable condition by having to talk to some people who are unhappy and who are in ignorance, then actually we're not progressing as much as we could. Because that's the activity of the great personalities that we read about in Srimad Bhagavatam, and the activity of the great personality who translated and commented on Srimad Bhagavatam for us, His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, who was criticized by his own godbrothers when Prabhupada went to the Western countries and began to spread Krishna consciousness all over the place. His own godbrothers criticized him, saying, well, I don't have a taste for associating with low-class people. This is exactly what Krishna is talking about. Sukha sangena badnati, jnana sangena janaga. Bound up by your own sense of happiness and knowledge. I don't want to disturb my own happiness by having to preach Krishna consciousness to somebody, because it's hard, because sometimes they don't appreciate it, because it's difficult to connect to somebody, it's hard to find them, and because they are suffering so much. And I don't want to have to deal with that. Let me just do my own things, just me and Krishna, got my own progress going on. I don't want to be burdened by the suffering condition of people in general. Let's look inside our hearts and see, if we have a little bit of this selfish notion going on. Because it is a huge burden to try to care for other people. You've heard me say so many times, but these young people going to college especially, they're just so depressed. So many of them, they call me up all the time. There's this one, he just came for the festival on Thursday. Actually, it's the second time there. He came for Govardhan Puja as well, but there's one guy, every day, you ask Nandini as well, every day he sends us like 10, 15, 20 minutes of voice messages on WhatsApp, just about all of his problems. It's like all the time. Oh, I got kicked out of this apartment complex I was living in. I was racially profiled, and the schoolwork is really crushing down on me. And I tried to make adjustments, and they're not helping me with this thing and that thing. And my parents are putting so much pressure on me. They're divorcing, and they're putting me in the middle of all this crap, and just like constant problems. My health. Just all the time. I listen to it every day. And sometimes I'm thinking, like Krishna is saying in this verse about the mode of goodness, I'm thinking, well, I don't have these problems. Why do I have to listen to you? Why do I have to listen to your problems? I put in a lot of effort to get to where I am now. I don't have to worry about anybody else. I'm cruising on easy street now. People are suffering so much. It's easy for us to forget about it. Great personalities like Brahma, they understand the purpose of this universe. The purpose of this universe is that people can become gradually purified and go back home, back to Godhead. He's always executing the purpose of the universe. That's why he's coming down to Priyavrata to ask him, you must take responsibility for all of these people who live here. You must guide them. You must be that Raja Rishi who inspires them in Krishna consciousness. Your Nivritti Marga is great. Your renunciation is great. Your Priyavrata, the vow is very dear to you. It's no doubt that you're a great brahmachari. But there's something more important going on, and that is the suffering of the living entities in general. You got to do something about that. That's why Brahma is saying, and to establish the significance of that point, he brought Marichi, Atreya, Vashishta, the personified Vedas, to make clear that this is actually the higher principle. As devotees, we need to do the same. Not that we're great renunciates. We might be attached to our comfort of our progress in Krishna consciousness or our progress in the mode of goodness. We might be attached, and we don't want that to be disturbed. But we have to come to a higher level. There's a higher purpose of the universe. And that means reaching out to as many people as we can. And if we suffer a little bit, well, that's a very special type of suffering. To suffer for the sake of others. Paradukkha dukhi. Prahlad Maharaj made it very clear in a verse which Srila Prabhupada often quoted. When he says, Naivodvijay paradaratyaya vaitaranyas tvadvirya gayana mahamrita magna chitta. This is us. He says, I don't have any problems in this world, on this side of the Vaitarini River. Vaitaranyas. He says, I don't have any problems in this world because I'm just so satisfied being absorbed in hearing and chanting about your great quality. Magna Chitta. I'm just in ecstasy, chanting Hare Krishna, reading Srimad Bhagavatam. I don't have any problems. I'm just absorbed in that bhakti bliss. He says, but Naivojude Parataratyaya Vaitaranyas Padvirigayana Mahamrita Magne Chota Tobi Mukha Chaitasa Indriyartha Maya Sukhaya Bharamudva Hitobi Mudan. He says, Soche, Shoche. He says, I'm lamenting, I'm suffering for all those people who are suffering, being infatuated with illusory happiness, Maya Sukhaya. Those fools, they don't know any better. He says, I lament for them. It's interesting, in that verse, Srila Prabhupada adds something to the verse. It's not in the Sanskrit at all, but Prabhupada he's employing Bhava Anuvada. He's employing the necessity to translate not just the words in Sanskrit, but the mood, the feeling. So Prabhupada added to that verse at the end. He said, I'm simply concerned out of love for them. There's nothing in the Sanskrit vocabulary of that verse that says anything along those lines, but Prabhupada added that in. I'm simply concerned out of love for them. He understands what is the mood here, the paradukkha dukhi. He understands. It's hard for us to understand. It's hard for Priyavrata to understand. That's why Brahma has to come with Marichi, with Atreya, with Vashishta, with the personified Vedas to make clear that there's a higher principle than just your own spiritual comfort. And that is the purpose of the universe, the suffering of the living entities in general, helping them. It's superior to Pravritti Marg and Nivritti Marga. This is Bhagavat Marg. Bhagavat Marg. It's very pleasing to the Lord. So Priyavrata will get the message. And even though he was attached to his renunciation, to his vow, even though he made great progress in transcendental knowledge, he will get the message and recognize that he has a responsibility to rule over the world and to guide people in general. Right? Archayam knows the verse that whatever action a great man performs, common men will also follow. And he knew, I have to set that example. And so he took on all that stuff, and it wasn't like a little thing. It wasn't just like, okay, well, I'll wear the crown. He took on a lot of things. In fact, what I find really interesting in some upcoming purport, I think, describes that he also got married, which comes with its challenges. I mean, I love my wife. I'm sure all of the married men here love their wives too, but there's challenge. There's a lot of effort. And you might ask, well, if he's already so transcendental, why couldn't he just stay single and still be the Raja Rishi? And Prabhupada comments in a purport, it comes up somewhere here, I think, wherein he says that, dealing with all this sort of stuff, home and hearth, or in Priyavrata's case, managing the whole planet, it requires a lot of motivation, a motivation for spiritual and material progress. And generally, it's not motivated unless there's a woman involved. So Priyavrata, he took on a wife, he got married. He knew that motivation is necessary. We're going to make progress for everyone, then it's necessary to have the female impetus. And I think most men here can verify. As the saying goes, if a man cuts down a tree in the forest and there's no woman around to see it or hear about it, then what's the point? What's the point? We only do something if there's a woman involved. So that motivation was necessary for him. So he took on all of these things. It wasn't just a simple thing like, okay, I'll just, instead of having my ashram out here at Gandhamat on the hill, I'll go to the capital and do my meditation there. No, he actually took on a lot of effort. He changed his lifestyle a lot so that he could fulfill the higher purpose of leading people in general, helping them in their Krishna consciousness. So similarly, we got to go out of our comfort zone. Brahma is coming out of his comfort zone. What is his comfort zone? Brahmaloka. But what does it say here? He descended. He left his own abode in the highest planetary system, descended to the place of Prince Priyavrata's meditation. He came out of his comfort zone. You have to literally leave your house. You have to leave, or in the case of Priyavrata, you got to leave your ashram and go to where it's needed. Brahma understands the purpose of this universe. He dedicates his activities to the welfare of the entire universe. And so he left his comfort zone, literally his home, and went to where is needed. Priyavrata did the same. Having established himself in transcendental knowledge in his ashram, he left to go to where he was needed. Similarly, we need to go to where we're needed. And we're needed in many places. People are suffering for lack of Krishna consciousness. We need to go to them. Gone are the days. I'm sorry if I can just be a little bit critical here, and I'm happy to hear some feedback. But gone are the days of the 60s and 70s where all you do is you just, open a temple somewhere and hope that people will come. That worked in the 70s. It was fantastic. People are so attracted to the dynamism of Krishna consciousness, Srila Prabhupada's personal presence. You open a temple, and people would come in droves. Now you have to go to them. You have to find them. You have to sit them down and convince them what you really need is Krishna consciousness. It takes a lot of effort. I would dare say a lot more effort than the 60s and 70s. And I hope this is not insulting anybody. But the arena has changed a lot. It costs a lot more money. People are a lot more busy and bewildered. They got a lot more issues. There's a lot less support from devotees. But it's so important for us to go out of our comfort zone and to help them. That's what Brahma did. That's what Priyavrata did. That's what we should all try to do also. I'm not trying to like get on anybody's case. I'm not trying to pressure anybody. But this is really the conclusion of this story. Why is it so significant that Priyavrata, although established in transcendental knowledge and realization, changed everything to take up, a politician's life? Because there's a higher purpose involved. We got to know that higher purpose and dedicate our activities to that higher purpose. That's what Brahma is doing. That's why he's called Bhagavan. He dedicates his activities to the welfare of the entire universe, for he knows the purpose of the universal creation. Let us be similarly dedicated as much as we can. And if you think, I'm already doing a lot, well, that's great. Just do a little more this week. Let's do a little bit more. We can. There's no impediment. I mean, there's a lot of impediments. I should say that there are a lot of impediments, but we can always find a way if we're always thinking about it. This is going to be my conclusion. What did it say about Brahma? He's always thinking about it. Didn't it say that in the purport? Yes, he is always thinking of how to improve the situation of the conditioned souls who have come to the material world to enjoy material activities. So we also have to always think about it. Otherwise, what are we thinking about? Oh, I didn't get this. I didn't get that. I want more of this. I want more of that. Me, 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 me. It's just, that's so tiring. And there's no conclusion to that. Some of us have been doing it for decades or for lifetimes. Me, 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 me. There's no conclusion. There's no end game. Brahma is always thinking of how to improve the situation of the conditioned souls. Even though that's challenging, Prahlad Maharaj is lamenting. He's feeling the pain of thinking about this conditioned souls and how to help them. So chaitato vimukha chaitasa indriyartha maya sakaya param udvahito vimodan. You recognize it. It's painful to think about. It hurts. I lament. Paradukha dukhi. I suffer because of others suffering. But we should always be thinking about it. And then you find a way. If you're always thinking about it, you always find a way. Sometimes it's just as easy as sending a message, sending a text message, checking in on someone who is struggling in Krishna consciousness, who needs some inspiration, who needs some support. We have so much technology whereby we can connect with people. So think of ways to do it. How do I connect with all these people? How do I share something positive and spiritually uplifting? If we're always thinking about it, then we'll definitely find ways to do it. If we're not thinking about it, we're just thinking about my body, my mind. Yeah. Then, what is it? Sukha samgena batnati, jnana samgena chanaga. Bound up my happiness, my knowledge. So Krishna consciousness means to be thinking of Krishna, but also thinking of how to connect people to Krishna. Hare Krishna. We're going to finish there and hope that I've made a point and that point is well received. I hope it's not too challenging or confrontational. But I mean, it's in the books. I'm just repeating what Prabhupada's saying. Okay, there's a hand up from Gitanagari Eco Farm and Sanctuary Prabhu. Oh, Sri Golok, how auspicious.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Very nice. Thank you so much. Just a few points. I just wanted to see what the parity was between someone that owns so many assets and karma, because sometimes Gurudev said that usually you squeeze as much as you can in terms of enjoyment, but because you're desensitized from the assets that you already have, karma is independent of the assets that you have. So I kind of wanted to see what your views are on that.
I didn't hear your first sentence. It cut out a little bit.
Yeah,
what?
So let's say the assets, the material assets that we have.
Yeah.
Now, karma is not dependent on the assets that we have, because we can squeeze as much as we can in terms of enjoyment, but there are people still committing suicide in Japan who have like millions and millions of dollars. So what's your, and then therefore, people are born with various opulences anyway. So my question is there a link between good karma and enjoyment? And if there is,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, that's a great and poignant example. And of course, nowadays it's cliche to even say, rich people, they're suffering. Now it's all over on social media and whatnot. People love to hear stories about people who are very successful and rich, but still suffer. I think Justin Bieber, I found really surprising. As a young man, so successful, so beloved. Now he's got some sort of condition whereby his face is like totally paralyzed. Amazing karma, People like scream he's like the new Michael Jackson. For some people, just Justin Bieber, and he's just like so beloved by lots of people. And now his like face is paralyzed, and I don't think he can even speak anymore. Wild. So anyway, yes, our karma means that you have good enjoyment. The money doesn't mean you have enjoyment. The karma means you have enjoyment. And that's what Narada Muni is getting at in that verse that we read earlier, that if you're philosophically inclined, if you're really intelligent, you'll see that your happiness comes automatically without endeavor, just like your distress comes automatically. It's not like the amount of money you have, although having wealth is a symptom of good karma. It doesn't guarantee enjoyment. There are people who have very little and they're enjoying a lot more than people who have a lot. So, of course, it is cliche, but that's something that we need to be reminded of, because we are kind of conditioned to think, I got to get more. If I get more, then I'll have more happiness. You've heard Gurudev reference that interesting psychological study, which showed that beyond just like the middle class lifestyle of living, which means to have enough, there was a specific definition where you make enough money to pay for like a middle class standard of living and just have a little bit left over once a month, enough to purchase one small thing. They're saying that the studies show that beyond that amount of wealth, there isn't any increase of happiness if you get more. Meaning, like, I don't know what middle class is these days. I guess it's like making 70, 80,000. I don't know. So making 100,000 doesn't guarantee more. 200,000 doesn't guarantee more happiness psychologically. Although it has been shown that if you're quite impoverished and you make more money, then it does increase your happiness. But it's up to a limit. Like there's a ceiling. There's a cap on that happiness that comes from literal money or assets. So psychological studies have proven that. But of course, there's no limit if we use all of our assets in Krishna's service, because the Prabhupada said it's a whole bunch of zeros. We put that one in front, and it's so valuable. And of course, you've done that so many times, and we appreciate your support for doing that. Otherwise, it's all a big burden, Yagyarta karmanon yatra, lokayam karma bandhana. You have so much stuff and it can be a huge burden. We should be grateful that we can offer it to Krishna and be free from some of that burden. But of course, I don't recommend just selling everything and just throwing all the cash around. Just like, very wealthy people, when they set up charitable funds, it takes management, because you can't just throw a bunch of money at some problem and make it go away. It takes a lot of intelligent resource management. So similarly, of course, you have so much, and you should always be thinking how to intelligently manage it and give it in ways that's going to be most effective for Krishna's service. And that's your blissful burden. That's how you can turn that karma bandha, the bondage of all those assets, into yagyarta, a sacrifice which benefits the Lord. And then there'll be real happiness. I'm sure you already know that, so I'm not sure why you're asking me that question. But, Tarika Prabhu has his hand up, so we should ask Tarika Prabhu to add. Oh, did you want to say something, Shri Golok? Or you agree with me, or you disagree?
No, that's fine. I was just trying to look at the parallel between Nivritti and Prabhuti, because I feel like Nivritti has does it have some kind of repression involved with nirviti, you know? Like even though intellectually I might know that something's not good for me and I have so many attachments, I'm gonna give it all up. Um, how do we know if it's artificial renunciation leading to repression versus something that's actually genuine?
It's a great question, actually, and it came up earlier in our discussion about the Prachetas. Narada Muni gave great financial advice. Narada Muni's financial advice, I don't know if anyone can remember, but Narada Muni's financial advice is that you always just make Krishna consciousness the priority, and then you know how much money you need. Because for some people, if they have too little, then they can't focus on their bhakti. It's like, I'm just barely paying the bills that I need to get by. And it's really hard to focus. Instead of chanting, you're just thinking, oh God, I have this upcoming bill. And So some people, they have too little and their Krishna consciousness is affected negatively. Some people, they have too much and their Krishna consciousness is affected negatively. Thinking about all my properties or all my things or all my business, everything that I'm doing, my investments, my portfolio. Whoa. And then we're not Krishna conscious. So how do we know how much we need financially? We just make Krishna consciousness the priority. That becomes the meter. That becomes the metric for knowing I need this much, not more, not less. So if you can manage all of that and remain Krishna conscious, then that's actually Krishna's special mercy. There's another verse in purport. I could give you a reference where it said that Krishna's special mercy is given to those who can actually manage a lot. They can have a lot of valuable assets and remain Krishna conscious and use in Krishna's service. He said that's actually a special mercy. But if you can't, and if it's affecting your Krishna consciousness, then give it up. Don't give it to me. Hare Krishna. Tarika Prabhu, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I guess we're still waiting for darshan, so perhaps we still have a little time.
There's not a lot of time. I'll have to try to think of what I can cover in the in short time. Well, at least let me thank you for a nice class, and wanted to make one correction. In the 60s and 70s, I can tell you unequivocally, absolutely, it was not easy to get people to come to temples. We knocked ourselves out. We killed ourselves to get people to come to the temples. You have, I guess, no idea how extremely hard we worked. It was our full-time occupation, day and night. Myself, I know I never got more than 4 hours sleep in a night. We worked incredibly hard to get people to the temple. The best draw, of course, was the feast. We put an incredible amount of work into the feast. We began preparing it previous day. Sunday, before Mangala Artik, we're in the kitchen, working hard, working all through class. Spectacular feasts, everything prepared with ghee. Just spectacular, really, really incredible feasts. Like you do not see anything like that anymore, which is really unfortunate. But people would come from far and wide. They'd travel for hours to come for that feast. But we personally, hand delivered invitations to people everywhere. We wandered everywhere and approached everyone we could find, inviting them to the temple. We distributed samples of prasad with an invitation to the feast. We made phone calls. We created lists, and there we go. We're time. I could go on at length, but trust me, we worked really, really hard. And if we're having more difficulty to get people to come now, it might be because, we're not making the same effort. But Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar. Hare Krishna.
Jai. Thank you, Prabhu. No one is doubting the monumental effort of the devotees during Prabhupada's time here in the 60s and 70s. guess I shouldn't say difficult now, but there's a different set of challenges nowadays. Particularly, costs a lot more money to do Sankirtan. But anyway, we should all try, regardless of circumstances, regardless of our situation. Let's all try a little more for Krishna. Let's all try a little more. All right. Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar Grantaraj Shri Mad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri the Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Prema Nandi Hari Hari Bo. Krishna Krishna Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanandane Namaste Saraswati Devi Puravani Panchamajine Nirvishesha Nirvani Vasudevadeshatarine Namaste Saraswati Devi Puravani Panchamajine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Vasudevadeshatarine Krishna Prabhupada Amoyadya Krishna Prabhupada Amoyadya Guru Yuga Bhakti Jivita Sari Saru Shalom.